I think you're intelligent, your demeanor and your temperament is exactly what we need. I think you would make a great representative for this country. I would love to see you debate some of these other candidates. Who, in your opinion, you would like to debate on the stage?
Well, I would like to debate President Trump and President Biden. I'm assuming both of them are going to be the nominee, which may be unfair to the others, but I just think we should have a debate. I think we should have a congenial, pleasant debate where everybody's not hating on each other. When my uncle, President Kennedy, was going to the 1964 election, he called up Barry Goldwater, and my uncle said to him, I want to do something different. I want the two of us go in the Caroline K, which was the presidential plane at that time, and have a debate in every city, but ride together and stay in the same places. And I think that's what our country is about. Everybody talks about how there's members of my family that don't like that, that are for Biden, which I understand. We were raised to debate each other every night, but to debate each other passionately without hating on each other. I love my family, they love me. And I think our country needs to find that again, where we can debate each other and do it on an elevated basis rather than going into the gutter.
Out from the 2024 election, polls are showing that voters are not happy with the possibility of a Trump-Biden rematch, and third-party candidates are set to play a decisive role in the race. Among them is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He announced his run as an independent in October after he ended his bid for the Democratic Party nomination. The latest poll from Quinnipiac University shows that in a three-way matchup against Trump and Biden, 21% of registered voters said they backed Kennedy. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. joins me now to discuss all of this and more. Mr. Kennedy, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Casey.
Why do 1 in 5 Americans say that they're interested in your candidacy?
I think they those are the people who've heard me speak. Those are the people who are listening to podcasts, listening to long-form interviews, and they want to change. They don't want to be told by either party that you have to choose between the lesser of two evils. I think they want a candidate who's going to bring people together, who's going to inspire people, who cares about, I'm the only candidate who's talking about what's happening to the middle class in this country, and this idea that if you work hard and you play by the rules, that you ought to be able to make a decent living, you ought to be able to afford a home, you ought to be able to raise a family, take a summer vacation, and put aside something for retirement. And that was the central promise of the American dream. If you like this video and you want to learn more about me and the movement that we're building, please go to Kennedy24.com. Over the last 5 years, our country has become something unrecognizable. Journalists have exposed a massive censorship complex. Federal agencies like the FBI, the IRS, the Justice Department, and even the Secret Service have been weaponized against political opponents. We're subject to constant surveillance. The government wraps itself in lies and secrets. Corruption is pervasive within the regulatory agency and the halls of power. There's only one thing that can turn this all around. And if you thought I was going to say that it's me, you were mistaken. That's not something that I can do alone. But if enough people want to reclaim our country, I can be your instrument. I'll be the sledgehammer that the American people will wield to smash apart the corrupt merger of the state and corporate power. But I can only do that with your active support before and after I enter the White House. And right now, what you can do is to invest in my campaign. Donate whatever you can. And I promise you that I'm going to redeem the trust that you put in me. And together we'll show that we, the people, can take back our power.
You also, in 2022, had this to say at a rally opposing COVID mandates. Watch.
Even in Hitler's Germany, you could cross the Alps into Switzerland. You can hide in an attic like Anne Frank did. Today, the mechanisms are being put in place that will make it so none of us can run and none of us can hide.
So your wife, Cheryl Hines, put out a tweet that called those remarks reprehensible and insensitive. Is she right?
No, she's not right. but it was something that needed to be said at that time because CNN, particularly Jake Tapper, who I know is very, very close to you, took those remarks and misinterpreted and mischaracterized
Well,
them.
you put it up there. You're comparing it to comparing COVID to what happened in Hitler's Germany.
No, I never
during
did
the Holocaust.
That. You show the whole clip. That's not what I was
Play
doing.
it again. Play the clip.
I don't want to play that again. I want to show what I was saying before that. If you can do that, you should play it again. What you're doing is misleading the public right now. What I was saying is that right now we're living in a time with artificial intelligence, AI, with GPS, with facial recognition systems, with hundreds of thousands of low-altitude satellites that are looking at every part of the Earth every day, and that this is a kind of turnkey totalitarianism. These are methods for control and surveillance that if you get the wrong person in government, a tyrant, that they can misuse those. It's been the ambition of every totalitarian system in the history of mankind to control every aspect of human behavior.
Even in Hitler Germany, you could cross the Alps into Switzerland.
And
you can hide in an attic like it. Do you understand why people were upset by this?
And now you can't. I understand why people are upset with your interpretation of it, your mischaracterization that I was comparing Hitler's Germany to the COVID lockdowns, which I never did.
We do not have a longer version of the clip. I do think that the clip that we have is very clear, but I will make sure that we look at the further remarks as well.
What we're seeing today is what I call turnkey totalitarianism. They are putting in place all of these technological mechanisms for control we've never seen before. It's been the ambition of every totalitarian state from the beginning of mankind to control every aspect of behavior, of conduct, of thought, and to obliterate dissent. None of them have been able to do it. They didn't have the technological capacity. Even in Hitler's Germany, you could cross the Alps into Switzerland. You can hide in an attic like Anne Frank did. I visited in 1962 East Germany with my father and met people who had climbed the wall and escaped. So it was possible. Many died doing it, but it was possible. Today, the mechanisms are being put in place that will make it so none of us can run and none of us can hide. Within 5 years, we're going to see 415,000 low-orbit satellites. Bill Gates says his 65,000 satellites alone will be able to look at every square inch of the planet 24 hours a day. They're putting in 5G to harvest our data and control our behavior. Digital currency that will allow them to punish us from a distance and cut off our food supply. Vaccine passports. You have a series of rights, as flawed as our government is. You can still go out and go to a bar, you can go to a sporting event, you can get on a bus or an airplane and you can travel. You have certain freedoms. You can get educated, etc. The minute they hand you that vaccine passport, every right that you have is transformed into a privilege contingent upon your obedience to arbitrary government dictates. It will make you a slave. And what do we do about this? What do? We resist. If you like this video and you want to learn more about me and the movement that we're building, please go to Kennedy24.com. Hey everyone, I'm leaving Omaha a 3-hour drive to Kansas City. This week, I've been to Lincoln, Tampa, Miami, Atlanta, Phoenix, and Salt Lake City. I've been traveling across America to meet with voters and hold campaign rallies so that I can get on the ballot as an independent in all 50 states. And everywhere I go, I'm moved by how Americans from all walks of life are investing so much time and energy and hope and emotion in this campaign. A lot of you know that my polling has been extraordinarily encouraging, but the passion and energy that I'm feeling from the crowds everywhere I go is my greatest source of confidence in our ultimate victory. And I'm going to do everything in my power to redeem their faith that we can turn this country around. So please donate today so that I can bring this show to a theater near you.
Last week, DeSantis and Newsom had a debate together, and they're having different discussions. The first opening question I'll ask you is, did you watch it, seeing a candidate running against a non-candidate? Did you have an opinion about it?
I know Governor DeSantis, and I admired the way that he handled COVID. He took the 3 greatest epidemiologists and biostatisticians and medical researchers in the country, and he said, what should we be doing? What are the alternatives? The government is telling us to do this. And he allowed a scientific debate to occur, and that's what we should have been doing everywhere. You want pandemic management to be transparent, you want it to be open to debate, you want people who disagree with it to be able to talk about it, and that was not happening. And I commend Governor DeSantis for that. I think the management of the pandemic in California was the worst in our country. It extended the lockdowns further than anybody else. The children were worse damaged than anybody else. We're seeing that now that our math scores have plummeted. We now have all of these learning delays, speech delays, and the worst state was California. I've known Governor Newsom for decades. I knew his dad. I think that he is a very, very formidable debater. He's got every gift. He's very eloquent. He's articulate. But I do think that he has a very difficult record to defend in California. Please go to Kennedy24.com.
I was born in 1975. I am at the heart of a generation that had mothers leave the home and head into work to make ends meet, who grew up with parents overcome with the general melees that hung over the country, and who has come to age at the end of the American Empire. It's easy to be critical. In fact, we are the generation that invented grunge and lived comfortably with angst in our spirits. We were latchkey kids who were forgotten by the boomers who preceded us. Their engrossment in their own successes in life left us on the sideline, too uncomfortable with conflict to say our grievances out loud, but also still hoping for the America our grandparents had described. We have put our heads down and tried our best to do the things that everyone said would work to create a happy life. We went to college. We got good jobs. We were active in our communities. We involved ourselves in civic institutions. We did all we could for our families. But after all of that, we still find ourselves stuck in between a world that once was and a dystopic one that is coming faster than we could have ever imagined. We haven't lost hope like the next generations, and yet we haven't gotten the traction that our parents did. Everything in our time is more difficult than the last, and not because of existential threats like Nazis or communists, but because of a self-induced suicide as a country. We have had harder barriers placed around us by an activist boomer generation and an overly sensitive youth. Our money has been ruined because of irresponsible politicians and political payoffs for power. The economic system is a crushing capitalism for most of us, yet we see the veneration of a few fortunate people that live in wealth unimagined by previous generations. I disparage no one for their success, but the punitive actions by a cancerous state have put Generation X squarely in the crosshairs of a brutal America. We still believe in hard work and success, but our children feel hopeless and don't think that anything that we say works does. And truthfully, their assessment, while harsh and fatalistic, isn't incorrect. Groceries are more expensive. Our food is processed and poisoned. Our lives are surveilled beyond understanding. Building wealth seems elusive. Societal norms are lost. Institutions are untrustworthy. And houses are out of reach. I've been more than skeptical of politics in my life. Everyone that has been paraded in front of me has been cut from a similar cloth. They seem like quality people with great ideas who are propped up by talking points most promoted by the media. There's always a horse race election, and the results have forever been the same. A trajectory cast in permanence, ever marching towards more control and more power for the state. I was intrigued by the Donald Trump of 2015. He was one of the most interesting people I had seen run. He was confident, blustery, and was one of the people in the club that came out to the porch to tell us what was happening behind closed doors. Yet even President Trump couldn't overcome the power of the machine. His wrecking ball personality was dismantled by the people he surrounded himself with. And he relied too heavily on untrustworthy people to do the work he claimed he wanted done. By the end of his term, he had spent more money than any other president. He had locked down an economy. He had empowered federal bureaucracy more than it had been when he came into office. And anything that had to do with the loss of his election came as the result of having a country locked down and frustrations pent up. Arriving at January 6th, the machine knew what they had been able to destroy, and no matter what came next, Trump had been ground up and spit out. His current revenge tour will not end the way his followers hope, and elections will appear stolen, the media will still be crooked, and Trump will fade away as a graciousless man whom the political system destroyed. I've made it clear that my choice in this cycle is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I've come to that conclusion not because he has all the talking points of politicians down, or because he's 12 years the younger of the youngest candidate currently running. I've come to that conclusion through a careful and elongated study of his actions. The things he is talking about are the things I resonate most fervently with as a Gen X American. He's discussing endless wars. He's discussing Bitcoin. He's discussing the rights that have been lost. He's discussing free speech. He's discussing corporate agency capture. And when he's talking about them, he's not just nibbling around the edges of a policy, but instead showcases his deep understanding about how any subject works. No one understands and articulates solutions to the problems we face as a country as well as RFK Jr. He's actually worked in the field of law for the last 40 years, suing the agencies and the corporations who have been unscrupulous in their treatment of the average American. He has a surgical precision about his solutions that gives us the best shot to begin to unwind this metastasized monster. I believe he understands the agencies that have built a prison for the well-behaved citizen and knows their inclination and adoration for power. He understands the shadow world that has been created with illegal immigration, where the non-citizen is the beneficiary of misbehavior, and the citizen is burdened with the humanitarian and financial crises. As a candidate, he discusses the revolving door of regulator and board member, and how the crony system comes at the expense of the American. No one in my lifetime has better articulated the angst of my generation. We were just becoming adults when the towers came down. We were just having children when the housing market collapsed and nefariously consolidated into the nationalized institution it has become. We were just sending our children into high school when the federal government made it permissible to lock everyone in their homes, cease educational operations, and obliterate the value of our dollar by paying everyone to stay inside. We've lived our lives surveilled by our own expensive ankle monitors, clicking yes to the terms that sign our rights away to a corporate state, to be sure to post on social media for our next like. This is the world we are navigating as a generation, and for once there is a politician who has traction, gumption to move outside the norms, and boldness to speak about the ills that have befallen us. He has the voice to disrupt the entrenched, and the capabilities to bring the ship upright from her side. When someone finally speaks as a representative, it becomes incumbent not just to listen, but to act. Our republic demands it. Our future will not exist without that action. This time I want a surgeon with precision who is lighting up the possibility within me that there might be hope for the flywheel of political punishment to lose its momentum. In the recent weeks, I've been reminded of his father's own speech about the gross national product, and how those words were a powerful call to the people of that generation. If we listen closely, we can hear not what just could have been, but what might still yet be ahead. My generation wants a different option to measure our lives by. We are tired of the Homo economicus life. We want an America for our children that measures the things that make life worth living.
Too much and for too long, we seem to have surrendered personal excellence and community value in the mere accumulation of material things. Our gross national product now is over $800 billion a year. But that gross national product, if we judge the United States of America by that gross national product counts air pollution and cigarette advertising, and ambulances to clear our highways of carnage. It counts special locks for our doors and the jails for the people who break them. It counts the destruction of the redwoods and the loss of our natural wonder in chaotic sprawl. It counts napalm, and it counts nuclear warheads and armored cars for the police to fight the riots in our cities. It counts Whitman's rifles and sex knives and the television programs which glorify violence in order to sell toys to our children. Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry, or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. And it can tell us everything about America, except why we are proud that we are American.
This is a river that was abused by big polluters. It caught fire when I started working there. It was dead water for 20-mile sections north of New York City, south of Albany, zero dissolved oxygen. Today, it's the richest waterway in the North Atlantic. It produces more pounds of fish per acre, more biomass per gallon than any other waterway in the Atlantic Ocean north of the equator. My pathway to become an environmentalist was a little different. I went to work for a commercial fisherman on the Hudson River, and I spent 35 years representing people whose livelihood depended on the waterways. As the result of our work, the Hudson is an international model for ecosystem protection, and we've cleaned up most of the large pollution sources in the river. But the fishermen are now virtually all out of business, because the fish, although they're abundant, are virtually all of them contaminated with General Electric's PCBs. But they didn't go out of business because their business model didn't work. The reason it stopped working is because the General Electric company had better lobbyists, and they were able to get permission from the Department of Environmental Conservation and federal EPA to do something that was completely illegal, which was to dump its waste into the Hudson River. So New York went along with it. And yet, a decade later, General Electric closed those plants and moved all 60,000 workers out of New York State. And they left the people of the state with a $4.3 billion cleanup bill that nobody can pay. This fishery that had enriched the palate and the culture and the economy and the history of the Hudson Valley for 3.5 centuries was closed down. And it was closed down because somebody got a subsidy. From the beginning, I've said that true free markets, not what we have in this country, which is corporate crony capitalism, would encourage us and force us to properly value our natural resources. If you like this video and you want to learn more about me and the movement that we're building, please go to Kennedy24.com.
Why aren't we shooting movies in West Virginia? It looks like Narnia. We could shoot Lord of the Rings there.
You're talking about the landscapes in Appalachia, and it's interesting because it's the richest ecosystems in North America. The reason for that is during the Pleistocene Ice Age, which was 20,000 years ago, there were 2 miles of ice over where I lived in New York. And the rest of North America became a tundra. So there were no trees left. And the only place that the American forest survived was in Appalachia. And then when the ice withdrew, North America was reseeded from those Appalachian forests. The typical forest in this country on the East Coast forest, like in Vermont or Georgia, has 3 dominant tree species. In Appalachia, there's 80 because just the richness of that ecosystem. More species per cubic meter than any other place in North America. And it's really a crime that we're cutting it all down. These coal companies, Peabody, Consul, Massey, have cut down 1.4 million acres. The 500 biggest mountains of West Virginia are gone. And it's a sterilized ecosystem after that. My father used to say about West Virginia, it's the richest state in the country, but it has the poorest population. And it's because The mines, Massey Coal is not locally owned. Peabody and Consul are not. They're all owned by Wall Street. Well, if Americans knew, this is the Purple Mountains Majesty. These are the landscapes where Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett roam. So much of our culture, bluegrass music, NASCAR racing, all of these iconic parts of American culture.
Racial equality.
Yeah, exactly.
And when I'm talking about this area, it makes me hopeful. It, makes my heart expand. For people to look at West Virginia as this backward area. It was the first woke state. They said no to slavery. John Brown said, no, we're not doing this.
If you like this video and you want to learn more about me and the movement that we're building, please go to Kennedy24.com.
How has the country lost its way so much?
President Eisenhower warned Americans against the emergence of a military-industrial complex that would transform America into an imperium abroad and a national security state at home, and that would bankrupt the American middle class. Today, we're living in the world that he warned us about, which is our democracy has become like a Hollywood stage set. We'll pretend to go through an electoral process that doesn't really give us any more choice than the Soviet Union's electoral process, where the party would pick the candidates and tell you who to vote for. And, there's nobody in this country that I talk to who believes that their voices are audible in Washington, D.C. When Eisenhower issued that warning, everybody remembers.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex.
The next paragraph is the federal scientific bureaucracy that will make science the slave to mercantile ambitions of industry and will pervert science and make it a tool for control. We've seen all that happen. And, lastly, with COVID, I think it's the predictable outcome of letting corporations capture the agencies that are supposed to regulate them. Please go to Kennedy24.com.
Have you ever wanted to go whale watching with RFK Jr. and Cheryl Hines in Hawaii? Have you ever wanted to go hiking with Bobby? No heavy lifting required. Have you ever wanted to take an improv class hosted by Cheryl Hines? Have you ever wanted to go falconing with Mr. Kennedy? Well, here's how you can make these exciting opportunities a reality. First, you're going to go to Kennedy24.com/activate. Then you're going to scroll down and make your account, which takes about 10 seconds. From there, you're going to have your RFK Activate dashboard and profile. You can change your picture, you can change your name, you can add a description. Then if you scroll down on your profile, you can see all of these personalized flyers with your own QR code, and you can share these to your socials with the click of a button. These personalized flyers can easily be printed to hand out at the grocery store, at work, at a family reunion, because what's better than talking politics at a family reunion? Now here's the fun part, you guys. The person in each state who brings in the most new donors by December 31st at midnight will get a private meeting with Mr. Kennedy. The person who brings in the most new donors nationwide by the end of the year can choose one of these exciting opportunities to go falconing, to go hiking, to go whale watching, and who knows, Bobby might do a backflip off the boat. Now, this isn't some fancy thing where you have to bring in $1 gazillion. All you have to do is bring in the most new donors. And between you and me, from what I've heard, these opportunities are well within reach if you get to work. If you want to go hand out hats to bring in new donors, if you want to hand out new flyers, if you want more exciting content, go to Kennedy24.com/creators and you can download all of that there. There's even some in Espanol. So go create your profile and start collecting as many new donors as you can by the end of the year. And in a couple of weeks, you might just find yourself on a boat in Hawaii whale watching. All right, bye.
1969, the Cuyahoga River burned for a week with flames that were 8 stories high. Lake Erie that year was declared dead. 0 dissolved oxygen. No fish life left in the lake. We had a Santa Barbara oil spill that closed all the beaches of Southern California and destroyed the recreational economy for 6 months. The eastern and Adam peregrine falcon went extinct from DDT poisoning. And all of those insults drove 20 million Americans out onto the streets. In 1970, the largest public demonstration in American history, demanding that our political leadership return to the American people the ancient environmental rights that had been stolen from our citizens through basically corporate corruption. The political system responded. Congress, over the next 11 years, passed 28 environmental laws, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act, Endangered Species Act, and a number of others. And all of those laws were intended ultimately to restore true free market capitalism. by forcing actors in the marketplace to pay the true costs of bringing their product to market. Because we knew the government agencies were going to get captured and they wouldn't enforce the law. So we put a provision that allows individual citizens whose livelihoods, whose property is damaged by pollution, to step into the shoes of the United States attorney and prosecute the polluter on their own. I brought hundreds and hundreds of those lawsuits because as long as you are cheating the marketplace, none of us gets the advantages of the efficiency, the democracy, the prosperity that free market capitalism otherwise promised our country. If you like this video and you want to learn more about me and the movement that we're building, please go to Kennedy24.com. Hey everybody, I'm here at the Other Side Academy where people who've been incarcerated or are homeless or addicts come for 2 years to transform their lives. It's basically a training school to learn pro-social vocabulary, to get reparented and learn life skills so that people can emerge with a healthy life on the other side. Almost none of the students ever go back to prison. The Other Side Academy shows how this country could heal if we set our minds to it. The students who come here usually from incarceration or they've been sentenced and they come here as an alternative. They come here and they stay for 30 months for free. The way they can do it for free is they have industries. They have a storage company with 15 trucks that does moving. There's a thrift shop that is more like a giant Walmart. There's a couple of those. There's a construction company and many others. The manager and director is Dave DeRocher, who before coming here was 4 times incarcerated.
4 times to prison.
The students who come here live here. You have to show up on time. Everybody's given a job. They're given responsibilities. They come early, they leave late. They learn to be reliable, good workers. And when you leave here, 100% of the people who leave to a job. Isn't that right, Dave?
100% of our graduates, whether you stay 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or 5, have a job, living wage the day they graduate.
And it was tough for you originally to convince employers to take on ex-cons.
Absolutely. So once our graduates started getting these jobs and showing that they were the best employees they ever had, now we've got hundreds of organizations that want nobody other than the Other Side Academy graduates because they have such a high moral standard that they live by, and they have a work ethic unlike anything they've experienced.
I'm going to take you in the do we call this the women's dorm?
The mansion? Yeah, where the women live.
Oh, it's an historical mansion. Very, very beautiful. This is all hand carved. The students refurbish this themselves. They take no money from government. It's completely self-sustaining. Women live here for 30 months in this beautiful, beautiful mansion. And what are the lessons they learn from that?
They learn to live here for a long period of time and realize that they do deserve to live someplace beautiful. But they have to put the work in, just like the rest of us. If you want something nice, you have to work. But the longer you're here, the more you realize, I belong here. I deserve this. Both here at the mansion and at the main building next door where the men live, we want both buildings to be beautiful so that they realize they deserve something like this.
And people come off the street to try to get into this program.
So there's 2 ways you can come to the Other Side Academy. You can walk through our front door, take a seat on the bench, and ask for an interview. We will interview you. If we accept you, you start right then. You need nothing. You can write us a letter from the county jail pre-sentence. We'll go to the jails all over the state and interview you. If we accept you, you get a letter of acceptance that the DA, prosecutor, and judge ultimately has discretion, can sentence you here in lieu of whatever time he or she deems necessary suspended over your head. Right now, of the 123 students, about 150 people living on property, but about 20 of them are from outside of Utah, from around the country. It is really incumbent upon us to make sure that everybody in this country knows that the Other Side Academy is here.
And Dave has promised me that if I do get in the White House, or when I do, we're going to start programs like this all over the country, and he's going to be an advisor on that. So
you've got my word.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for everything you do.
You're welcome.
Please go to Kennedy24.com. This fig tree that I'm sitting in, probably 200 years old, and it began as a little tiny seed with almost no chance of growing. And yet it's grown into this mighty structure that dominates the waterway. When I started this campaign last April, almost 7 months ago, a lot of people treated it with ridicule and derision. They said it was a long shot, that it would never work. And yet the campaign has grown, and we're now leading President Trump and President Biden in all Americans under 45 years of age. We're leading in independent voters and in many, many other categories. And we have a real shot at taking back our country. I've spent my career fighting so that Americans can enjoy these kind of natural resources. Nature is the infrastructure of our communities. And if we want to meet our obligation to our children to give them the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as the communities that our parents gave us, we've got to start by protecting our environmental infrastructure, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the wildlife, the fisheries, the public lands. When we destroy resources like this, which we're doing all over the country right now, we destroy part of our capacity to sense the divine. And in that sense, it's not just an economic problem, but it's a moral problem. As President of the United States, one of my missions is going to be protecting resources like this so that my children and that my grandchildren can come and climb this tree and lots of other fig trees like this and enjoy the same serenity and enjoy the same connection to nature as I grew up with. When you invest in my campaign, you're investing in our future and you're investing in our children. I hope we can get 100% participation from all of our supporters to give whatever you can. If you can only give $1, give $1, because I'm going to be the best environmental president that this country has ever had.
So what got me at the table with Bobby Kennedy, especially when I'm from the deep left, you know, I'm from the Bernie Sanders, Black Lives Matter left. I survived police brutality. I lost a friend at the hands of the cops. So there was no way that I wasn't going to be on board with Black Lives Matter. But here's what I found interesting. Those same liberals in 2020 who burned down the world for me, in 2021 called me an anti-vaxxer when I said the same misgivings I have about the cops I have about medicine. Historically, they've harmed my community the same way. And those same liberals that told me that Black Lives Matter said that I was a Trump supporter when I told them that I have fears and concerns and historically informed skepticism about what Big Pharma could do to the Black community. To me, I never left my progressive values. To me, a progressive is somebody who holds big business accountable. To me, a progressive is somebody who stands up for the little guy, my community included. So when I first saw Bobby Kennedy on the Capitol steps of Colorado, on one side, this is 2020, on one side, it was Black Lives Matter, everything. And on the other side of the Capitol, the building, medical freedom, everything, right? I'm looking at the other side of my building. I'm seeing my partners from BLM raising hell. And on this side, we over here fighting for medical freedom, raising hell. But my concern overlaps them because what's been done to the Black community in the name of medicine has amounted to medical apartheid. And the only liberal that listened to me was Bobby Kennedy. He was it. And when I saw that my stance on making sure that we eliminate bigotry in all of these institutions was a progressive stance that I shared with Bobby Kennedy, and I met him in person that day, I was like, all right, you got my attention. What's going on, you know?
If you like this video and you want to learn more about me and the movement that we're building, please go to Kennedy24.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next President of the United States, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Why do we have the inflation? Because we spent $8 trillion on wars. That got us nothing. We have inflation with everything, with food, our childcare, our health, everything, but nothing like housing. So why do we have this housing inflation? Well, the biggest part of the reason is that a group of corporations, mainly BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, now own 89% of the S&P 500. So they own all the business in our country. They now want to own all the land, the real estate. The central fulcrum of the American dream was that if you worked hard, if you played by the rules, you could finance a home, you could raise a family on one job. And we're moving now, because of these giant corporations, from an ownership society to a rental society. And we go from being citizens to being subjects. I'm not going to let that happen to our country. The most important thing we can do immediately to start restoring the middle class in this country is to get this generation of young people into homes. I'm going to do this. I will not let you down. I will not give up, but I need help. I need an army. And if you do that, I will get your country back to you. Well, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you all very much.
What the foreign policy elite sees as American geopolitical interests are not actually our interests. It is not in our interest, ultimately, to be the single sole hyperpower dominating the entire world. What is in our interest is peace, is cooperation, is the healing of the enmities that set people against each other across this world. And if we devote 99% of our energy to fighting each other, we're never going to have the coherency to meet the ecological challenges, the cultural challenges. And we see what these war efforts are doing to our country, how it's hollowing out our economy. So the cost that we pay for these so-called American interests, which are really, at best, the interests of American-based transnational corporations, these costs are not worth it. Not only do we never win these wars, like we're not winning the Ukraine war, but the end result is that we are worse off than we began. Like, look what happened in Iraq, Syria, Libya. They were destroyed and became hotbeds of terrorism and instability. We are not getting a very good dividend from the hundreds of billions of dollars we spend every year on war. But if we pull back from 800 military bases, there's almost no limit to what we could do. When we set our priorities, when we set our vision toward healing rather than domination, toward real wealth rather than the stealing of the wealth of other nations, then we can cash in the peace dividend and we can rebuild this country.